Okay, this is the next to the last of the briefings. This one's on the department and the university response to the novel coronavirus, which I guess we're all dealing with in some way or another. So I'm just going to go through a rather extended timeline of how we've dealt with this. I'm sure you probably have a similar kind of story at each of your enterprises, probably with fewer items. I think the fact that we're in the educational business and we have this population of students that we're responsible to and for is a little bit different than running a business. I mean, we have to deal with all the issues of employees in place, but we also have to deal with the issues of students in place. So discussions started at the end of February. Of course, we already knew, there were cases reported globally, I guess, as early as December. And people knew something was going on. And we started, the first official notice from Amarillo had to do with the restrictions on international travel. That came on the next to the last day of February this year. And then our spring break was planned for Monday the 9th through Friday the 13th of March. And on the 3rd of March, we get this email to students saying, maybe you shouldn't take that spring break trip off to wherever it is because you might not be able to get back because you may be stranded there if the government shuts down the borders or something, or you may have to, isolate when you get back and things like that. On the 5th of March, we get this email from the director, Mike's the associate director of the Center for Teaching and Learning Excellence for our college, and we get this email about teaching continuity training. So you can see the line there. It includes a short notice request to move classes online. So clearly, administration is talking to CTLE saying, we think we're going to move stuff home, but there's been no notice to faculty at this time or anything. I go off to this conference. The ASEE, American Society of Engineering Education, was having its annual conference. The Southeast region was having its annual conference at Auburn. And I was the president of the organization. So we're making these executive board decisions during the same time frame, the 3rd through 5th and 6th of March, about whether to cancel the conference or not, or about what we're going to do. We ended up giving people refunds. And it was on that Friday, the 6th, that we get note from Clemson is actually restricting there no non-essential travel, and domestic conferences like this were considered non-essential. So we had people who were supposed to be at our conference from Clemson already canceling. We ended up, if you didn't want to come, you got a refund. I think we had 150 registrations and we had 25 no-shows or something like that. But so that's the 8th through 10th. So I'm at Auburn, and while the university sends its email, contingency plan to leverage expertise in online education. But very few residential faculty have ever done anything with online education. So then on the next Monday, we get this email. That same day, we get this email. Faculty, migrate all classes to Canvas by the end of the week. Canvas is our learning management system. It's like Blackboard, if you're familiar with these different technologies. It's just a way of putting all your class stuff, and has a grade book, and you can chunk stuff into modules and stuff. So we're, this great. I mean, this idea that faculty are just going to magically take in a week and put the rest of their semester online. I love the optimism, but it was a bit of a fantasy. First of all, not everybody teaches. Not everybody teaches by death by PowerPoint. So I think they're thinking everybody can just take their PowerPoints and talk over them, and that'll be it. But anyway, it's very optimistic. Next day they canceled conference travel. I'm at my conference, and it's just I was able to get that in. But we had students who were planning to go to the IEEE Southeast Con that week in Raleigh, and we had to tell them, sorry, you're not going, and see if we could get some money back from them. And Thursday, planned to be announced soon. Then Friday, we do finally get the plan. They're extending spring break through the 17th, and then we're going to start remote instruction. And they're trying to be careful about calling it, distance delivery and remote education, remote instruction, and because again they have this idea that Worldwide has this online and the branding and they have quality online, and there is something to a quality online course that's different than just taking your residential class and putting it online. So again, so there's something to that. But they also, they're trying to do training to get people up to speed. They're not canceling any of the in-person flight instruction, things in the aviation maintenance science program, A&P training and things like that. Those are continuing in person, but they're doing, temperature measurements for risk screening and stuff. But they're leaving the campus open. You can still go to the student center. You can get food. The dorms are open. They're closing the academic buildings off. And they say if you took a cruise or went overseas, you have to quarantine for 2 weeks. There's no telling. We went through 10 different versions of a form to list who can get into your research lab. And it was just a slowly, because faculty initially wanted everyone, and then no, you can't have undergrads. Okay, then they won't. Anyway, it took weeks to get this sorted out and to clarify that it's really only for critical research that's time dependent. The students either needs the research to graduate, or there's a project that needs it that. And the mentality of the researcher is, I have to get this done, without realizing this thing's affecting everywhere in the whole world. So everybody's timeline is slipping right now. And I'm sure you on the board deal with some of this, that you've got things that where there's slippages, you can't help it, and there's other things that need to continue onward regardless of this coronavirus incident. So I think it says I sent my first note about returning from break on that day, that Friday before classes, saying, okay, no in-person classes or office hours. So even if you're going to stay on campus, you can't come to a faculty member's office. So that's the situation. And then I started sending updates out to students and faculty. They were fairly at least daily, sometimes twice daily initially. I think people got sick of getting email from me. The university set up a web page with a FAQ, and then we started doing our Zoom meetings right before the faculty are getting ready to do the classes online. I've been on travel, so I get back from this travel. I canceled the rest of my trip. I was going up to Tennessee to see family. I've been at a conference. Who knows if anybody at the conference had the coronavirus? It's already obvious you don't have symptoms immediately. So again, I'm supposed to travel. My brother's older than me. He's had a liver transplant. The other one's got COPD. I'm not going to go see my brothers. I end up back here, of course, trying to take care of things. We had a department meeting the next day, so I did all the one-on-ones with all the faculty members on that Monday, and then just seeing how they're going with their online prep. Everybody's taking a different strategy. Some people with online experience from developing classes for Worldwide are able to make a transition into a more real online class. They know the kind of prompts to give students. They've taught this way before. They know how to use discussion boards as measures of student engagement. Whereas other people are like, oh, I'm just recording my lectures and putting them online. So the first classes were that Wednesday. I start, one other thing on that Tuesday. So this Red Grant, I'm like, okay, one of the ways to run a large organization through Scrum is called Scrum at Scale. So you have teams of teams. And so at least we can organize the department into some teams while we're distant, so they'll have a smaller group of people to keep in touch with. So initially, I'm just doing this trying to as a communication framework for the department, so that every day faculty will get together their small group of 4 or 5 faculty members and talk to each other about how it's going with their online transition. It's not true Scrum by any means, but it is the team concept. I got some pushback on that pretty fast, within a week or so, but that we got started that way. Wednesday, this is all within a week now. We have our first day of classes online. I start doing office hours on a daily basis for students. They can Zoom in and we can chat, and I've gotten some good information that way. That Saturday night, I sent out a survey to the department. I'm starting to get some emails from students about, I don't know if I can handle this online thing. And it's obvious from around the country just how diverse. Just paying attention to other educators and the things they're saying online. What the range of situations students end up in. And so I put together this survey to try and find out about our own students. And immediate responses were just fascinating. And some of the comments, people are like, I'm back home. My parents, want me to take care of my little brother. I'm back home. I have to do chores. I don't have a place to work. My mom's like, why are you, get off the computer. I have to use the computer kind of thing. So, it's just not like students being on campus. Their attention, besides the coronavirus issues, they're just in a wide variety of situations. Some of them aren't safe. Almost over 15% in both the surveys I did, they didn't answer they felt unsafe, but they said it could be a better situation. So I think this applies to young women, maybe some people, LGBTQ students, who just aren't comfortable in their families. So again, our students are now distributed all over the place, and I'm starting to get emails from students saying, faculty member gave a timed quiz, at like 10 a.m. But if I was in the Pacific time zone, that'd have been at 7 a.m. And so I think faculty weren't aware of some of the issues, and so that's been part of my role in this whole thing, is to remind faculty about the wide variety of issues students are in. Hiring freeze was announced. Like I mentioned, we were able to hire people in spite of the hiring freeze. Within a week, they're wanting to know how engaged students are with the online platform. So I'll share the results with you of the two surveys, and you can see those. The university announced a pass-fail option. I got out a little ahead of my faculty in terms of that. I was advocating that, and I was open with students that I was advocating for it. And some of my colleagues didn't think I should be doing that, and that's okay. I think it's a thing which reasonable people can disagree. And I tried to be explicit that I wasn't representing myself. I was giving my word to upper administrators, but not as the department policy, but as what I thought ought to be. Then, finally, after a week of online classes, the university says we're going to shut the dorms down. And initially, it said anybody can come back. You can live in the dorms. You just can't go to classes. You're going to take it home. So this massive disruption of students having to move back home. They allowed a limited number of students stay, international students, students who really, again, maybe for safety reasons or whatever, just couldn't go back home. So there's a small number of students still living in the dorms, but they wanted to get everybody into singles so there'd be no shared rooms, and that's from a medical safety point of view, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm sure they wanted to reduce the footprint in terms of the number of buildings they had operating, just in terms of a cash flow point of view. I sent an email to admitted students. We would have had preview day that Friday and Saturday. They would have been sitting in classes with students on this Friday, and we would have been showing them around campus on that Saturday. So I sent what probably came across as yet another, we're sorry the coronavirus is impacting you, email like you get from any other vendor, but I thought it was necessary to do that. We stood up a Discord. If you know Slack, Discord is Slack for gaming, or you could say that Slack is Discord for Office. It's a communications platform, lets you have different channels within the server. So we have a department server. My team at the Near Lab uses this for technical communications, and some student groups use it. We've got a student doing tutoring using a Discord server. Only about 55 of our students have signed up. That's 1 out of 7. That's not too bad. And it's just an attempt to keep some community. So there's a place where faculty can chat. There's a place where students can chat. And there's also a space to try and be the fishbowl room that we have here. We have on the 3rd floor of the Lehman building, where our students hang out and faculties drop in. And it's just a nice space. And so we're trying to maintain some community even though we're all apart. Sent out a second survey because we were having the issue of the dormitories being closed, and I wanted to know how that was impacting students. So we'll get the results from that to you. I was given some feedback previously that these teams weren't very focused, and that was right. They were. It was an ad hoc way to keep people in touch with each other. And so the teams now have some focus, something to work on besides just keeping in touch. So one team's working on assessment and accreditation. We have to maintain our assessment activities, even though we're in this online delivery. One's looking at what do we need to do about our capstone sequence and our work. We make some changes there. There's been some particular discussion regarding the different needs of hardware students, or even the different needs between software engineering students and computer science students, electrical engineering students versus computer engineering students. We've tended to, we know in the workplace they have to be one size fits all in a certain way. They have to be able to stand up and work on various kinds of projects, and yet they're paying for a particular degree, and we want them to feel like they're getting that degree. 1st of April is when our name change became effective and we became Electrical Engineering and Computer Science, and that's also when our governor finally issued a stay-at-home order. No comment. So the next day, of course, flight and A&P training and all that has to shut down. So all the in-person training stops. And of course, that's a crucial element of revenue to the university. You know, we depend on tuition, we depend on flight training revenue. And so immediately, of course, the campus is more fully shut down at that point. Critical and essential employees only. Leadership says they're taking a 10% pay cut. A voluntary 3/4 time option is announced. But again, we finally are sort of getting back into a steady state after, we were sort of getting to a steady state when this dorm disruption happened, when they said we're going to shut down the dorms after letting everybody come back after spring break. And then we finally sort of are back and have been in a quasi-steady state since then. And so the only real big news since then was they announced an early retirement buyout for tenured and tenure-track faculty. So if you've been at the university more than, that's not in years of service greater than 20, it's 50 plus your years of service has to be over 70 is what it is. So you can be 40 and have been here 30 years and the like. But the buyout is you take your number of years of service, and it's the larger of that in 26, multiply it by 2 and divide it by 52, and that's what fraction of your 9-month salary you're going to get as a buyout bonus. It's basically a 2-week salary for every year you've been here, up to a maximum. It's been a pretty steady state since then. I mean, we continue to have weekly department meetings. Behi and Donna and I meet every day to see what needs to be taken care of in terms of crises, in terms of any impediments that may have come up through the various teams. The teams are working. We've actually put in more of a Scrum structure, so there is now a product owner for each team. There's a Scrum master for each team. We're trying to make sure there's a department level backlog. We're using a Scrum tool called ScrumWise. So we've tried to take advantage of the fact that we had this NSF grant that said run the department using Scrum, to run the department using Scrum while we've got this, while we're distributed everywhere. We actually have a framework for operating the department other than everybody reports to the chair. So the student affairs team has been working, and they gave us a list for your student advisory board members that you'll get to meet with. They've helped us generate that, as well as some student awards that we'll be doing at the end of the week. The curriculum professional development capstone team is trying to sort out these issues associated with capstone. I'm trying to get them to design a capstone that would be appropriate for every degree program, and they're dealing with issues of shared ownership. Academia, you say, here, go teach this, and you hand somebody or you hand 2 people a class, but rarely have we had situations where we had a team that's responsible for developing the content of a class, and they may not be the ones to deliver the class. And I think that's where we have to get to in the long run, is this idea that the department's responsible for the curriculum, the department's responsible even down to designing the instruction in the class, to ensure that the students are going to attain the learning outcomes that we want them to. And now, instructors are still going to have their elective classes, they're going to have their research classes, but for core in the program, I think we have to take increasingly shared responsibility and not just say, here, you go teach capstone, here, you go teach software engineering. I think we need to take a little more collective responsibility for that. And maybe in the long run, we need to take collective responsibility for things like PhD students. So it's not your PhD student, it's our PhD student. But that's some of the impact that this research grant is having, even though we've got all this stuff going on with coronavirus. So I know that's probably a little bit more detailed than you want, but mean, our lives have been just, I'm sure like your lives, it's just been really interesting to move to this. Now, you're going to be talking with faculty, and faculty can tell you better what, I'm not teaching this semester, so they can tell you what their experience of teaching in this distance remote education environment is like. And that's one of the reasons I wanted y'all to go ahead and have a chance to meet with faculty like you would normally have a chance to do during lunch. We don't usually have a session that's just meet with faculty. And then you'll also get a chance to talk to the students and find out about it. So I'm going to have one more set of slides, I think, just a brief, what would you like to get out of this and how can you structure your feedback to us. But that's it on the coronavirus impact.